Hey everyone, welcome to the Under the Covers channel. I'm Francesca, and today we're talking about one of my favorite topics to cover this time of year, and that is setting reading goals for the next year. Today I'm going to be sharing some tips on how you can set reading goals that you're actually going to stick to in 2025, or if you're watching this in the future, any year or at any point. So whether you're a casual reader or someone that just reads a ton of books, over 100, 200, whatever it is, I've got some tips on here that are hopefully going to make reading fit into your life, be a little bit more fun, and also help you discover new favorites as well. As always, I've got a couple of blog posts that you can also reference that I'm going to leave linked in the description box down below, which go a little bit more into this topic. And also make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and you hit that bell notification for when I post new videos. I have some really fun videos coming up that relate to reading goals. One is going to be the flip through of my old physical reading journals to give you some inspiration if you do want to set one for yourself. And I also have one for how I'm tracking my reading in 2025, which, spoiler alert, is going to be digital. But without any more delays, if you want to learn some tips on how you can set reading goals that you're actually going to stick to, keep on watching. The first step is you have to make your reading goals personal. They are your goals, and there is no one-size-fits-all type of reading goals. For example, if you're a mood reader, it makes absolutely no sense for you to plan out a whole year of what kind of books you're going to be reading, because you should really just follow whatever is your mood. Anytime that you're going against whatever is what you like to do, you're going to fail. Also, setting goals for a number of books or a certain amount of time that you're going to read for per day would be great goals for a beginner, so that you're building the habit. But if you're already somebody that reads a ton of books, it's kind of like a waste to set a reading goal by the number. You should actually try to set goals that are a little bit more creative, and they're going to give you a better reading experience because you're already going to hit a numbers goal. Although if you still want to do that, you can still totally do that, but you should be doing things that are going to work better for you. For example, you might want to explore more a particular genre, you might want to read more diverse authors, or you may want to read books that have a particular vibe, which brings me to my tip number 2, which is to create a book vision board. Now, I can't take credit for this idea. I saw it on TikTok and I cannot remember for the life of me the name of the account that I saw it on. It was just scrolling through my For You page, but I love the idea of creating a book vision board. What kind of vibes do you want for the books that you want to read for the year? Now, you can create one for the whole year. You can create one for the month if you want to be doing like themes for your reading. I think it's something very creative and will help you find books that fit that mood to add to your TBR. You would do this the same as you would do any other kind of vision board. Go on Pinterest, find some aesthetic pictures, and you can print them out and add them to your reading journal. For example, if you're doing a physical reading journal, or if you're doing a digital reading journal, you can also include them in there. I do also have a template that is a Canva template that I'm going to be giving for you guys, and I'm going to leave that link in the description box down below. I will have 2 types. One is going to be as your wallpaper, so you can add that as your wallpaper for the month and switch it out every month if you want, or one that is actually one that you can print out on a letter size paper, and you can add that to your reading journal, or instead of printing it out, you could add it to a digital reading journal if you're using something like GoodNotes for that as well. I think this is a really great and fun way to stay inspired and also stay kind of on track. I know that personally one of my goals is to read a little bit less contemporary and stay more in the paranormal and fantasy genres. So I'm definitely going to be filling my book vision board with all of those kind of aesthetics that are otherworldly. Tip number 3 is to get social with it. So here's a pro tip. Reading is way more fun when you're sharing it with others. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this. You can join a book club, whether that is an in-person book club or an online book club. If you're looking for a fun book club to join, we are bringing back our League of Lusty Ladies online book club. So I will leave the details on how you can join that in the description box down below. It is going to be mainly centered on Storygraph, so we do have a book club page on there, and we're going to be reading a particular book every single month. It will be either a fantasy or historical, paranormal, those kind of genres, and available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you are a Kindle Unlimited member, you will be able to pick out all of the books that we're going to be talking about in the League of Lusty Ladies, and there will be a live show here on YouTube once a month to kind of discuss the book. Having a group to discuss books with will also keep you accountable, and it will make reading just exciting. You will have a place to go and vent or get really excited and giddy about something that just happened, or simply a place where you can go and get more recommendations. So always having community will make anything more fun, and also it will help you stick to it. Also, I should mention that if you're intimidated by large groups of people, you don't have to find something that is overwhelming to you. You could just find one friend online that you guys could do buddy reads from time to time and keep each other accountable and have someone to discuss books with. Tip number 4 is to join a reading challenge. Now, there are reading challenges for any type of person. So whether you're somebody that prefers to gamify your reading, or if you just want something with a little bit of structure because you are always wondering, what should I read next? Sometimes that paralysis of what book to pick out next is what stops you from reading the next book. Having a reading challenge will give you that little bit of structure and will help you prompt you into picking up the next book that you should be reading. Lots of these challenges also provide lots of recommendations for you to choose from and a community as well. So this one is actually related a little bit to the previous tip. Plus, I think that everything is better when you make it a little more like a game. Now, here's a shameless plug. You can actually join our Romanceopoly Reading Challenge in 2025. Our Romanceopoly Reading Challenge, which is a year-long reading challenge, has gotten a complete revamp. And I talked a little bit more about that challenge in another video. So I'm going to leave that linked in the cards and in the description box down below so you can learn more about the challenge, what it entails, what are the rules, how many books you have to read for the year, and all of the details. There's lots of fun printables and resources that you can use to stay up to date. And you can also use the hashtag Romanceopoly so that you can stay in contact with the community as well. Tip number 5 is to experiment with genres and formats. So a lot of times we get stuck in one thing, and at times it can get repetitive and we lose interest, which also stops us from reading more books. If that is the case, I always recommend that you mix it up a little bit and you try new genres or subgenres, because that will also open you up to finding new authors and new things that you didn't even know you were missing out on. So start with some baby steps. If you are a fantasy reader, maybe try finding some steampunk that mixes some paranormal and fantasy elements with historical. Or if you're a thriller reader, how about some historical mysteries? And you can explore slowly expanding on what you already love and just opening up the field a little bit more. And when it comes to formats, I think this is the biggest tip that I can give you for reading more, and that is always try different formats. There is no format that doesn't count as reading, whether you're reading physical books, ebooks, or audiobooks, because yes, audiobooks are reading. I personally don't read as many physical books anymore, although I love the feel of a book in my hands, but I find that with ebooks or audiobooks, I can get a lot more reading done. If I was only stuck to reading physical books, I would probably read 10 books a year. You don't have to have a Kindle in order to try some ebooks, so you could just download the Kindle app, for example, and start getting some ebooks. You can download a sample, you can find free books, or you can join a service like Kindle Unlimited, which honestly I absolutely love because it gives me the freedom to try out new authors in a guilt-free way, because if I don't like it, I didn't have to pay full price for the book. But also, I always have an audiobook going at all times. And in fact, there were a couple of years when I was super busy and all I read was audiobooks. And I probably got through 200 books in those years strictly by listening to audiobooks. So always mix up your formats. If you are in a situation where your commute is really long, whether you're driving or you're on a train, always listen to an audiobook. So you can listen to an audiobook while you're cleaning your house, when you're working out, or you're on a run. So just on that, it will make such an impact on how many books you can read. And also it will make reading such an important part of your life. I personally also recommend, if you are doing multiple formats at the same time, that you have very different books for those formats so you can keep everything in line and you're not getting confused. So for example, if I have a historical romance on audio, I will have some kind of paranormal or contemporary on ebook. All of these things will help you stay curious and stay motivated to read and to find new things. Tip number 6, and it's one that I probably should follow more, it's to limit the number of ongoing series that you're reading. I am super guilty of that, and I will tell you what happens is that you're actually not keeping up with reading all of those series that you love. And once you fall behind, it's really difficult to catch up and go back to that series, and maybe you have to read 2 or 3 books and sometimes you just don't do it. So if you get overwhelmed easily as well, I highly recommend that you manage the number of series that you start so that you have enough that you're rotating through, so you're not always reading the same kind of book, because sometimes that can get boring, but also not too many that you're too far removed from the storyline when you go back to a new book in that series. That will also guarantee that you're actually finishing those series, which again, I'm super guilty of this. I have a million series that I'm reading, and there's a million that I'm behind on. So that is a great tip that I can tell you. Don't do like I'm doing, and actually you'll be able to finish those series and get all the enjoyment that you want out of them. Tip number 7 is a tip that will work really well, especially if you're a more seasoned reader, but also it can work if you are a newbie, and that is to set some creative reading goals. Like I said at the beginning of this video, it's not just about setting a number goal. Set something very creative. Think of it as a project that you're doing with your reading. Now, here's a couple of fun ideas that I'm going to give you, and you can take it or leave it, take a few of them, or however you want to do it. But the first one is to tackle a big epic series in small bite-sized chunks. I think we're all intimidated when we see a series that is really long, massive, but also really epic and popular, and we really want to read it, but we don't want to make that commitment because it feels overwhelming and like not something that realistically we're going to achieve. So my recommendation is that you pick a series for the year and that you read one book every month in that series. Number one, it's going to give you that boost of excitement that you have that one book to look forward to. And depending how big that series is, maybe you're done by the end of the year, or you've made serious progress in that series in your first year. So I would always recommend that you have one long series that you're doing this with, and you can change it up every year. So there's also some variety. Maybe this is the year that you tackle the in-depth series, which we do have a video on how you can do the in-depth read along with us. That is basically to read one book a month in the in-depth series by J.D. Robb, which I cannot tell you how much you're going to enjoy doing that if you do pick it up. It's romantic suspense with a bit of sci-fi. It's supposed to be futuristic, but mind you, it was written in the 90s. So when I say futuristic, it's actually going to feel a little bit old school, but it's so good. But there's a ton of other series that you could be doing this with. There's the Immortals After Dark series by Kresley Cole, the Night Hunter series by Janine Frost, which we did a read along on our podcast. So you can actually go to the podcast page on our blog and you can listen to all of our book discussions on those books. So you can read and then listen to the discussion so you can read along with us. And this kind of takes me into my next idea, and that is to read some book to screen adaptations, meaning you're going to read the book and then you're going to watch the TV show or the movie that has been made from that. I think it would be a fun project to do for the year, maybe once, maybe a couple times a year, maybe even once per quarter. I know for sure I'm going to be doing more of that as the Black Dagger Brotherhood series is going to be released on Passionflix. I think season 1 is coming in the spring of 2025, and I've already reread Dark Lover by J.R. Ward in preparation for that. So I will continue doing the Black Dagger Brotherhood read along. We're going to be discussing those books here on the channel. So that is something that you could be doing right along with us. Another fun creative idea that you can add to your reading goals for the year is to read a romance book that was published in each decade. I always have the best time finding some of those classics that really built the genre. And I think that it's so important for us now to see where those books that we love came from. Maybe there's a couple of problematic things in some of those books, and that is okay. But I think that it's important that we learn what those classics were that are now the foundation of what we love from the genre. So I think this is definitely one that I'm going to have a lot of fun with trying to hit for 2025. You can also explore the world through your books. So you can read a book, for example, set in each continent. Maybe you want to tackle Europe this year and read a book that is set in each country in Europe. Or if you want to tackle the United States, you can start by reading books that are set in every state. You can also set reading goals in base of how you're enjoying books right now. So for example, take a look at your stats for the previous year, which would be 2024 right now, and see what kind of books you really enjoyed, which ones you rated a little lower, and how you want to intentionally change what you're reading in the next year so that you're reading more of what you really enjoyed the previous year. So in my case, I rated much lower all of the contemporary romances that I read, although contemporary romance was the majority of what I read. So I want to be more intentional and read less contemporary romance, more fantasy, more or paranormal, because that is what actually I really enjoyed reading in 2024. So I do want to rearrange the genres that I read a little bit more intentionally. So that is also something that you can do in base of how was your reading for the previous year and what you really enjoyed and what you just didn't. You can also pick an author for the year and just really dive into the backlist of that author and read everything they've ever written. And for the last tip that I have for you guys today, tip number 8 is to track your reading in a way that you love. We're always talking about tracking your reading, and I think that there's something really important about tracking the books that you're reading. Number one, we don't always remember everything, so it's really nice to have some way to look back on and even remember if you've read something, because a lot of times I forget what I read. But tracking should only be done if it's something that you enjoy. Now, there are many ways that you can be doing tracking of the books that you read. Some of them are public and some of them aren't. And then you also have to find the way that works for you, meaning what kind of person are you? If you're more of a spreadsheets person, there's definitely some amazing templates to track your reading on Google Sheets that you could purchase from Etsy. I'm going to leave a couple of the ones that I really love linked in the show notes down below. I think that there is some really, really amazing things that are being done with Google Sheets reading trackers that are going to blow your mind. Plus, they're also really easy to use and they're going to give you a lot of data on what you're reading. And another benefit is that it's absolutely private. Nobody has to know what's on your spreadsheet. If you're the type of person that just wants to be very hands-off with the tracking, you definitely want to use some kind of a tracking app. The most popular sites that you can use are Goodreads or Storygraph, but there are certainly other apps that you can use, and I'm going to have another video coming soon where I give you some comparisons on Goodreads and Storygraph. I did use Storygraph in 2024. It was my first year using it. I did not use Goodreads for the first time in probably over 10 years. So I have a comparison video that's going to be coming soon on those two, and also another video where I talk about reading tracking apps and some of my thoughts on those as well, and give you some options there as well. So if that is what you're looking for, you can be as private or as public with those as you want. But for the most part, those have more of a social component as well. Then of course, there's journaling. You can have a physical reading journal. You can have a digital reading journal on an app like GoodNotes. And that's where you're going to get really creative with creating your own spreads, or you could find a template as well for a digital reading journal and just fill out as it comes in that template. And then last, you also have things like Notion or Airtable, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit more when I talk about how I'm tracking my reading in 2025. But there are also templates that you can purchase for Notion or Airtable that will help you track your reading and also give you stats for the year. So always find the system that works for you. Find one that doesn't feel like work, and it's more like a separate hobby that you're adding into your reading as well. So it's kind of like a parallel hobby, which should give you also some enjoyment to sit down and do your tracking for your reading. And that's it. Those are all the tips that I have for you today. Hopefully with these tips, you're going to set some reading goals that you're really going to be able to stick to in 2025 or whatever year you're watching this in. Don't forget to check out those other blog posts that go a little bit more in detail on that. I have a post that has my podcast episode for my reading resolutions and goals for 2024, which were very loose and actually were a success because I managed to get back into reading in 2024 after having a bit of a 2-year hiatus where I read very, very little. I will also leave links in the description box down below where you can check out the League of Lusty Ladies book club on Storygraph, the first episode of our Black Dagger Brotherhood read-along where we discuss Dark Lover by J.R. Ward if you want to join us for that, and also where you can find more information about the Romance Happily Reading Challenge. All of those details are in the description box down below. And now I would love to know, what are your reading goals for 2025? What are some that you've already said, or what are some that you've thought about after watching this video? Remember that the best goals are the ones that make reading fun and not a chore, and the ones that are very personal just to you. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.